Hi everybody, it's Tammy again. Hey, all my friends from Best. I hope you're having a good day today. I hope you're checking out our website to see all the activities that we're linking for you each day, and that you're finding some things in there that are of interest to you. A reminder about washing your hands, guys. Make sure to keep those hands clean, and if you're out, make sure you stay 6 feet away from other people so that we can do our part to help stop the spread of this virus. All right, so last time when we finished chapter 2 of The Secret of Goldenrod, our main character, Trina, was really questioning whether the house was haunted or not. So I'm excited to get going on chapter 3 to see what else she discovers today. Chapter 3. Is it a long way into town? Trina asked as they hit rut after rut on the dirt road and cut through the cornfield. 6.4 miles. I locked it in, her dad said as they stopped across from the big red barn. Of course, that's once you get to this point. He looked in both directions before taking a left-hand turn onto the 2-lane road toward town. As Trina twisted in her seat, watching for a stir of dust that meant that they were the only people left on Earth, a terrible thought struck her. Pop, do you think the school bus comes out this way? Maybe, he said, turning on the radio to nothing but static. But I can drive you if it doesn't. You sent the school my records, right? Trina said. After too long of a pause, Trina turned to stare at her dad. Pop, did you forget to register me? Again, she wanted to say, only this time it would be a lot worse if he forgot, because this was the one chance she had to be there for the first day of school, just like all the other kids. Of course not, he said, switching off the radio. I figured we'd take care of it when we got here. Trina folded her arms and scowled. No, you didn't. You forgot. You always forget everything. She stamped the floor with both feet and turned her head to the window. I tell you what, he said calmly, as if she hadn't just acted like a baby. After breakfast, we'll get you registered, and then we'll go buy school supplies at Hank's. And if you're a really good girl, I'll get you another sucker. He was trying to make her smile, but it wasn't working this time. I'm not a little girl, she said. You have to take me seriously. You have to think about my feelings sometimes. He didn't say anything, but Trina wasn't surprised. He was really good at not talking about things that made him feel bad. She looked out the window again. Just as they passed the large green sign that read, Welcome to New Royal, population 397. Trina would have slipped off her seat if it hadn't been for a seatbelt. 397 people? That's it, Pop? My last school was bigger than that. Why hadn't he warned her that the town was so small? Do they even have a school? Of course they have a school, he said, fiddling with the radio again. They turned off the road, following the handmade sign and an arrow that said, Main Street this way, and drove toward a little park in the center of town. The park had a bandstand and ornate benches and drinking fountains, but there wasn't a single person in sight. It looks like a ghost town, Trina said. Nah, it's a cute little town, her dad said. I'll give you a tour. Her dad turned right, driving past Al's Antiques and Vacuum Repair that shared the block with Schegstad's funeral home. 3 generations taking care of your loved ones. Gerald Schegstad, director. Schegstad. That name was familiar. Hey, Trina said, isn't it kind of weird that the funeral director is the one who wrote you the letter about Goldenrod? Her dad shrugged. I don't know. Sometimes funeral directors have a lot of family records. Well, I think it's weird, she said. They turned another corner of the square and passed a surprisingly majestic First National Bank of New Royal and the elegant post office. Hank's Tool and Lumber took up most of the next block. One or more turn put them in front of the red brick New Royal Public Library with white columns and lots of steps. It sat on the block all by itself. Sure are a lot of big buildings for such a small town, Trina said. That's weird, too. I'm guessing New Royal was an important town in its day. Probably the only town for miles. They pulled up in front of the Cat's Meow Diner. That's a low, white building badly in need of paint. It sat in the middle of the block with the New Royal City Hall on one side and the old-fashioned gas station with one pump on the other. Bolted to the window frame above a flower box filled with dried-up flowers was a rusty dinner bell. Homemade breakfast served all day was painted on the window in peeling blue paint, surrounded by blinking white lights. Most of the lights had burned out. How about this place? Her dad said cheerfully. I hear it's the best place in town. Trina said, certain it was the only place in town. Dangling tin cat cutouts clinked overhead as Trina pushed the cafe door open. She counted 6 tools, 5 tables, 4 booths, and 1 jukebox in the whole restaurant. And the jukebox was out of order, except for 2 men in a corner booth and a plump, gray-haired waitress carrying a dirty dish in one hand. The place was empty. See yourselves, the waitress said in a hoarse voice, her ponytail bobbing as she went by. I need a chance to clean up after the rush. Then she disappeared behind a set of swinging doors. Rush? Trina wondered. When her dad rolled his eyes, she knew that he was thinking the same thing. They both squelched giggles as they sat down in the corner on stools covered with crackled black plastic. Gosh. The menu was an old-school chalkboard mounted above an enormous griddle. Eggs every which way, waffles, and a mile-high pancakes with real maple syrup. On the end of the counter was a plastic dessert case with a chocolate chip cookies, mammoth brownies for 50 cents each. The place was run down, but the food sounded delicious. Dishes clattered somewhere in the sink, and then the waitress pushed back through the swinging doors. She gave them the once-over. You folks just passing through? Nope, her dad said. We live here, Trina chimed in, making out the name of Miss Kitty on her waitress badge. Live here? Then you must be brand spanking new because I know everybody in this town. Miss Kitty grabbed a coffee pot from the hot plate next to the griddle and filled Trina's dad's cup with steamy black coffee. When Trina held up her cup, Miss Kitty pursed her lips and shook her head. We're living out at Goldenrod, Trina said. Trina swore that Miss Kitty's pink cheeks paled by several shades. You didn't say Goldenrod, did you? Miss Kitty said, squinting suspiciously. Sure did. Her dad poured sugar into his teaspoon until it spilled over its rim and into the coffee. Trina nodded. Hear that, boys? Miss Kitty's hand trembled as she set the coffee pot down with a clank. They said they're living in Goldenrod. Both men snorted. Ha! That's a good one, the older man scoffed. Not for long, the younger one said, and they snorted again. That's right, said Miss Kitty. Nobody can live out there. That old place is haunted. Trina felt every hair on her body stand straight up. But her dad laughed. Anyone who believes in haunted houses needs to have their head examined. Oh, so you're one of those, Miss Kitty said, slipping paper placemats in front of them. Believe you can explain everything away with a fact. This time he shook his head. All I'm saying is old houses shift and creak with the weather, and suddenly everyone thinks they're haunted. Town council voted to tear down that eyesore. Miss Kitty stopped mid-sentence and stared at them with eyes like red-hot laser beams. Now I know who you are. You folks are the whole reason that place is still standing. Come here to fix it up. Well, good luck with that. Miss Kitty slapped a fork wrapped in paper napkins in front of each man, making it clear that she wanted to get on with her business. So, what do two newcomers like you want for breakfast? 2 eggs with bacon, Trina's dad said, sunny side up. Mile-high pancakes for me, Trina said. Miss Kitty waited. Please, Trina added. Miss Kitty didn't write down the order. She just stepped up to the griddle and started cooking. She cracked the eggs with one hand and whipped up the pancake batter with the other, shouting the whole time above the sizzling bacon and the rattling roar of the fan. That house has caused nothing but trouble since it was built. Crops and businesses have been drying up around here for generations. Trina's dad sat down his coffee. You can say that about any small town in the Midwest. Blame it on the interstate. It's simple American history. Trina winced. Sometimes she wished her dad wouldn't sound like he thought he knew everything. And this was one of those times. Pop, shh, she whispered. But it was too late. Miss Kitty whirled around. Her eyes were glossy, and for a second Trina wondered if she had seen a tear in one of them, until Miss Kitty pointed that spatula at her dad, poked at the air with it as she talked.